What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Lakers Outsiders podcast. I am Gary Kessler. I've got an entire starting five today. I'm joined by one guest that's probably going to do the talking of five people. I'll introduce him in a second. He already knows.
Okay, but enough about Dylan.
We've got a jam-packed crew today. Let me go and just introduce everybody real quick. Joining me, as always, is Hani Amadi. And Hani, I feel like you're going to be the most wholesome individual on this podcast. How does that feel?
I'm just here to enjoy the last ever Lakers Outsiders podcast before it gets disbanded from every platform because of what Anthony's going to do here. So I'm just, trying to enjoy my last time here.
Yeah, spoiler alert. We have Anthony Irwin of Locked On Lakers and Silver Screen Roll and wherever the hell you've got to have like a wine sponsorship by now, right?
A few of them. A few of them. I like how we say like Anthony Irwin of the Locked On Lakers podcast when like it used to be Anthony Irwin of Lakers Outsiders. Like that's how it used to be introduced for like a really long time. And then
we traded you for cap space.
You took my job from me. Wow.
We traded you for cap space, and then you became an all-star. You should be happy.
It's tradition.
Also joining us today is Dylan Heiser. Dylan, it's been a while since you've been on the pod, but I want to give you this time to explain why you are 0 for this year tweeting Laker games. They have yet to win a game with you tweeting. Would you like to give us a response to that?
I think the curse is real. Like, I'm starting to buy in. I don't know. Can't catch a break. They got beat at the buzzer by the Kings that one night. They lost to the Knicks, I think.
Can I ask, like, Dylan and Grant and, like, all of you who are younger than me about this? Why did dad hats become a thing again? Like, why is that a thing? I want to know. Like all of a sudden, we went from fitteds and like everybody was like nice and clean to all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, we're all gonna just like 35-year-olds and up.
When you got a baby face like Dylan, you got to find a way to aid yourself somewhere.
Oh man, this podcast is going to be.
We're off to a great start, guys.
As always. Also joining us, last but certainly not least, is Grant Goldberg. Grant, Anthony's probably going to launch some racial jokes at you on this podcast.
I would never.
So, what's going on, man?
I just got a haircut and.
Look, I just came back because I knew you guys were going to make some kind of joke about my haircut, but Rob Pelinka is going to tell a story about how I have made my return, much like a certain biblical figure. No.
What biblical figure was popular for getting a haircut?
Samson?
Anyways, I'm here. I'm here to make Anthony fat jokes. I'm here to call Hani handsome.
Okay, I was really scared of what you were going to call the brownest dude.
Oh my god!
All right,
I'm immediately regretting this decision.
We've literally already got a comment in the live chat about Anthony being drunk.
They're not wrong.
Not guilty.
Yeah. I feel like we've been recording for half an hour. We haven't even really discussed what we're going to talk about yet. All right. Well, let's dive into this. We are going to talk about Anthony Davis. We're going to talk about another Anthony, a better Anthony. Well, I mean, Carmelo Anthony's a better Anthony than Anthony.
Whoa. Low blow.
It was necessary, and you should appreciate that.
Calm your glazed donut face ass down.
As long as you guys don't start talking about Jen and her like Honey Nut Cheerios, then we're all right.
Yeah, no, we're going to talk about Anthony Davis today, and that whole saga was a week and a half that felt like a couple of months, like that just dragged, and it was not fun, which is crazy with your favorite team chasing after a superstar. Usually that's kind of fun to talk about, but this was not fun at all, and it's probably going to lead into the summertime. So Let's go ahead and dive into it. I'm throwing it to Anthony first so we can all just kind of put our feet up, just kick back, and who knows what he's going to have to say. But, Anthony, what were your thoughts on how the whole process was handled from the Lakers side of things?
See you guys in 40 minutes.
All right. There were two moments, I thought. There were two moments that I thought kind of skated by that didn't get enough attention. The first of which was LeBron answering a question from Dave McMenamin about whether or not he wanted to play with Anthony Davis, and he said that he did. And then Alvin Gentry went out there and said, hey, the league should look at this for tampering, right? Like, we already knew that the Pelicans were up in arms for the way that this could potentially go down, right? So I think that was the first moment that should have set a tone for everybody paying attention for how those negotiations were going to go. And then the second thing that didn't exactly help that was one of the reported, not the reported, because like Brad Turner and Tanya Ganguly's report was a little bit different than Woj's, but one of the reported offers from the Lakers side of things was like Rondo and Lance and some shitty picks, and I think you combine those two things and you kind of sort of understand how negotiations fell apart, and they fell apart quickly. I don't think after those two things happened that the Pelicans were ever like remotely interested in what the Lakers had to offer. And the Lakers tried, they were bidding against themselves. They kept adding to the pot and adding to the pot and adding to the pot. And the Pelicans just kept saying like, and this says something really, but the Pelicans just kept saying, we trust Danny Ainge over you guys. And if I was in the Lakers front office, I would probably be, I wouldn't be offended so much as I would say, all right, it's time to wake up and rethink the way we do business.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that's like the ultimate slap in the face. Like somebody's trusting Danny Ainge. And the Pelicans, it seems like they're under the impression that Jason Tatum is going to be available this summer. Yeah. And I have a hard time believing that, especially because there's the whole Celtics dynamic to this thing is that, it's just so cloudy for me because Kyrie, basically commits preseason, tells the season ticket holders in Boston that, hey, I'm going to resign here next year. And then we get to the trade deadline and, he's telling the media he doesn't owe anybody anything and he's going to do what's best for him and his family, which I feel like that answer is usually a translation to I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. Like usually, I mean, you don't get that unless it's like I'm about to do something that's going to piss a lot of people off. But just to stay, I guess, more on topic here, I'll throw it to Dylan since Dylan hasn't been on in a while. Sorry, Hani, I'm going to have you go last.
No, it's fine. I'm chilling.
This is payback for your Nevada beat Boise State thing last night. But
I'm surprised you haven't burned that sweater yet, by the way.
It'd keep me warm with all the snow outside. But anyways, Dylan, we talked about it a lot in our group chat with just kind of how, these negotiations went. It basically went from, they were lowballing the Pelicans to they gave up their Godfather offer. Do you think the Pelicans kind of saved the Lakers from themselves in this kind of scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for sure. I think that, the crazy offers that the Pelicans were looking for with like the 4 first-round picks, like all of the young guys plus like the salary fillers and stuff like that. I think that would have been like, I think the Lakers acted too desperately in this case. When they don't really need to. I mean, they will have another chance to try to, trade for Anthony Davis. They will have free agents that they can sign in the offseason to get their other star. But they kind of just played their hand really quickly in these negotiations, and the Pelicans kind of made them look like fools for it, honestly. And if they would have ended up taking the offer with like Lonzo, Ingram, Kuzma, and all those picks and everything, I think that it would have been a more than fair trade for the Pelicans. But it definitely would have it would have made things a lot more difficult for the Lakers going forward, I think.
Can we? I want to legitimately go around the room here and ask how much people would have paid to see Del Temps while like during that last Boston game. right? Like he's sitting there. He's sitting there while Danny Ainge is telling him like, "Oh, we got this superstar in Jason Tatum, and we got these potential superstars in Jaylen Brown and Scary Terry and Marcus Smart." Like I want to know what it looked. I want to know how Dell Demps was watching that game as that was going down, because like that was a super impressive win on the part of the Lakers. And that was a lot of the guys who we were told this entire last month that it was an offensive offer that the Lakers were making to the Pelicans. I want to know like how much, Gary, how much would you have paid to be able to see to watch Dell Demps, knowing the outcome of that game, to be able to watch Dell Demps watch that game? I'd have paid like $100 happily.
I was going to say, I'd probably pay, the price of admission to an NBA game.
Yeah. That'd have been so much fun. That'd have been so much fun.
I would have paid 100 of Anthony's dollars to pay.
Well, if you paid attention to the scoreline, the Lakers won the Anthony Davis Bowl last night. They not only are they allowed dibs on Anthony Davis in the summer, but now the Celtics are legally obligated to allow Kyrie to go to the Lakers this summer just because of that win in Boston last night.
Like you didn't want Rajon Rondo, game-winning shot maker Rajon Rondo? Come on.
I don't think you're happy to take that now.
No, but
I'm broke, so I wouldn't pay anything to watch Dell Demps, but I get the idea.
Okay. I would pay, Hani, and then I just invite you over and we can watch it together, because
cool. Pay-per-view.
Yeah, exactly. You know how people host like UFC events at their house and like have people watch boxing matches. Much like that, we'd gather around, friends and family, maybe start a fire. I don't know.
Light a tiki torch too.
I'll bring the nachos.
A Dell Demps viewing party. Sounds like the worst idea ever.
The good news is, like, you could call him all you want. You could prank call him all you want. He's not picking up.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's funny you bring that up, because one of the points that you and Pete and I think Harrison, or maybe this was a couple days ago, I can't remember, but you guys had talked about that it was really interesting that the Pelicans only wanted to talk to Magic, right? Like, they didn't want to talk to Pelinka. They didn't want to talk to really anybody else in that front office. And I'll let you kind of take it away, but just kind of expand on that point that you guys had made, that really Magic was the only one they wanted to communicate with in these trade talks.
They identified their mark, right? Like, if you were to look at the two, nothing against Magic, nothing pro Pelinka. I think they both suck at their jobs. But like, if you were to look at both of those guys' histories professionally, and you were to find like the better negotiator between the two, I would probably avoid the guy who was able to finagle $35 million twice over from the Lakers for or $50 million for a 35-year-old Kobe from the Lakers, right? So like, Magic doesn't have any negotiating background. He doesn't come from that background. Basically, the way Magic has been successful is he had a shit ton of money, and he threw a shit ton of money at all of these investments, and he knew what to invest in, and he trusted those people that he threw that money towards, and they made his money work. Whereas like with the Lakers, this is twice now that he has overstepped his boundaries. First, he drafted Mo Wagner when the scouting department wanted Omari Spellman. And the second time is now, where the Pelicans wanted to negotiate only with him to figure out how to get Anthony Davis to the Lakers, when the Pelicans never wanted to send Anthony Davis to the Pelicans. And what it turned into was Magic saying, all right, I have a job in mind here. I was told that I told everybody that I was going to bring superstars to LA. And with that as his lone goal, he had a blank check to work with. And yeah, the Pelicans wanted to avoid Pelinka because actual negotiations would go on with Pelinka, versus if they just talked to Magic, he only had one goal in mind, and it was living up to his word.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me tell you why Anthony is right.
He just drops up.
Wow,
Oh man,
Thanos gets another one.
But no, I had mentioned that point on Twitter basically that like Magic put this timeline on himself, which is hilarious because of how critical he was of Jim Buss for kind of operating the same way, and he puts this 2-year window on I'll make sure that we're contending again, that we get superstars in here, blah blah blah, and honey, I'll let you kind of take it after I talk about this for a sec, but how concerning is it that with all this cap space and all these young players and was a very promising team until the injuries started to pile up. Like, do you think that they're worried that, hey, we're not going to get any free agents this summer? And that's why they were going so hard at getting Anthony Davis, just to kind of cover their potential losses by not getting anybody, by striking out this summer? To
an extent, yeah. I think from where we were last offseason, where it seemed like Paul George was going to sign, to the Kawhi stuff and then Jimmy Butler and all of that, where it seemed like they were very confident that they were gonna get a superstar this coming summer to pair with LeBron, to where we are now, where they were willing to give up their entire core that they've spoken so glowingly about it publicly for Anthony Davis. I think, yeah, they definitely have concerns about it. Like with Kawhi, it doesn't seem like the Lakers are very much in the running anymore. It feels like it's a Raptors or Clippers thing. Kevin Durant doesn't really seem interested in playing with LeBron, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, I think the fact that, Anthony Davis is a generational guy. He is somebody that would have been on the Lakers for the next 10 years, and they would have been able to build around him even after LeBron was gone. And that's a guy that you're willing to trade everybody for and change your plan for. And the fact that the Lakers didn't take on any salary past this year and the deadline after they struck out on Davis tells me that they still feel at least somewhat confident, maybe not as much as they did last summer, that they can still get a guy, or else they would have been, trying to get the Marc Gasols or Mike Conleys of the world, or Bradley Beal, somebody who is a second star, maybe not quite on the level of the guys that are going to be free agents this year, but would have helped this year. They're still at least staying a little bit patient and thinking that they can get a second guy and then make a trade for somebody like that afterwards.
Dylan, there's been reports that Magic is flying to Philly to address the team and kind of have like an open forum and basically allow feedback, which I joked in our group chat that basically that's how he's going to identify who he trades first. Like whoever steps up and says something first is going to be the first one shipped out. But how much damage control does Magic need to do here? Is it realistic to think that he can kind of – is it realistic to think that he can kind of right this ship this season and get them playing kind of the way they were earlier in the year? Or do you think and you guys can jump in after Dylan, but has too much damage been done to really salvage this team's like their ceiling for this season?
I don't think that there's been too much damage. I think that it's just kind of like the heavy damage that has been done. It came at basically the exact wrong time. The team is just now getting healthy again. The young guys are still, like, Lonzo's out. Kuzma's been dealing with injuries. They're trying to get back into the playoffs. Luke's jobs security's in question. It all just kind of was like a perfect storm for the Lakers, but I think that they do have like leaders on their team, and they obviously have LeBron James. So I think that they'll be able to right the ship. Like, I thought that one of the things that Rondo, like the report about Rondo calling a practice for with an unscheduled practice the game or the day before the Boston game. I think there's things that they can do internally, like within the team, not necessarily Magic, that can help right the ship and build the chemistry back up. But it's a step in the right direction that Magic's going out there, because I think that he has kind of has to speak for himself on what everything happened and why everything has been put out in the public, and how all the negotiations have gone so poorly, and how he's basically played his hand here. But it's tough to say. It's tough to say that they won't be able to come back from it, because they were such a good team before the injuries, and they do have the best player in the world, and they do have other leaders and veterans in the locker room like Tyson and Rondo and stuff like that. So
I think not only did Magic was absolutely right to fly to Philly. Like I tweeted that, right? Like I said that as soon as the trade deadline passed and the Lakers remain somewhat intact, RIP to Zoo and RIP to Svi, less so to Beasley. But like Magic has some damage control to do in that locker room. He has a ton of work to do, because it wasn't so much that Magic balked at the idea of offering up so many players. He balked at the idea of offering up so many picks.
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference there in the locker room, right? Like it's a lot easier for a player to identify with oh shit, like we were all a part of this trade proposal and it didn't go through, not because our front office didn't want to give up all of us as like in aggregate as players, but because they didn't want to give up their future flexibility as a part of these picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge difference. The other person who I think needs to speak up here is LeBron, right?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
You know what the big constant is here, and you know, pardon my French, but like LeBron's Instagram post about, you know, how organizations and owners are not going to be loyal to players, then therefore why should players be loyal to owners and organizations? Like that's all bullshit. Like LeBron's all of his player agency movements and all of his flexing his muscle as a domino mover in the NBA, that tends to infringe on or infringe on other players' agencies, right?
Mm.
So like if I was a Laker and he's out here yelling about how terrible it is that Anthony Davis wasn't moved or that he isn't going to be allowed to play, if I was a Laker, I'd be like, motherfucker, you were going to move me at halftime. Right? Like you were getting ready to move me. You were getting ready to trade me immediately as soon as it suited you. And I think he not only, it's great to hear that Magic flew out to Philly, especially on the back of the win that the Lakers just had this past Thursday in Boston. Like those two things can come together to help to build some forward momentum. But I think the other person who needs some answering to in that locker room is LeBron. And I think, like, I'm not on Instagram. I don't have these things like readily available to me, but like Damen on Twitter said that nobody liked his post about the win in Boston, right? Like none of the Lakers players, coaches, whatever, liked his post about their big win in Boston. That's hugely telling. And then you go back, and I wanted to give it some time. Maybe they were traveling and nobody had time to do so. And then I went back and I checked again this morning, and that I think that remained the case. So like LeBron has some owning up to do in this locker room. Yeah,
because I mean, basically, obviously, everybody shouted out Rondo, because he hit the game winner. But I feel like, especially just something I've noticed throughout the course of the year, is Brandon Ingram and his relationship with Rondo has been really, really good. And you just don't see that, I guess, with LeBron, with some of these youngsters, right? And especially you haven't really seen it with Ingram. That relationship has just been kind of clunky and just, I don't know. It just seems like a really weird fit, both, I guess, on and off the court. LeBron kind of publicly endorses Lonzo quite a bit. But yeah, it's just weird. And it was weird for me to hear LeBron kind of answer questions about basically the position that the other players were in, right? And how they should feel about, the rumors and stuff, because like LeBron's never had to deal with that. LeBron has never been like rumored in trades, when the deadline rolls around. Like even if he was, like, whoever leaks those rumors or has even thoughts of trading LeBron James is fired on the spot. So it was just really weird to hear him kind of answer questions about that because, like, I get it. He's an NBA player. He's in those locker rooms, but it's like that's not relatable to you, man. Like you've never had to worry about that. And I feel for these young players because a guy like Brandon Ingram has had to deal with this every single year that he's been in the league. And he's the longest tenured Laker right now. And it's like every single trade deadline or every summer, it's like, okay, who are we going to talk about trading Ingram for now? It was DeMarcus Cousins, and then everybody kind of laughed at the Lakers because Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss, who were running the show at the time, basically said he was untouchable at that point, right? And then Paul George comes up, and then Kawhi Leonard comes up, and now Anthony Davis, and Ingram's name has been kind of linked to.
And then
pretty
who's
much all
next? Like that's the big thing here. That's the big thing here. Is that like what's next? If it isn't Anthony Davis, what win now player is going to be next?
Yeah, because there's always a superstar that's like disgruntled about their situation, and the Lakers here come the Lakers, and them being linked to trying to go get that player. And all the young guys
remember that old movie, The Number 23?
Yeah,
with Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where like it was really easy to tie every single thing back to the number 23. You do all kinds of like stupid math that was able to equate back to the number 23. That's how it's going to go with the Lakers, man. Like we're going to find some tie back to if it isn't Anthony Davis, it's going to be some other superstar down the road who's like 13th and 3 years removed hamster's roommate's buddy was at one point a Laker fan. Like that's how it's going to go. And like if I was a Laker who was invested draft capital into, right? Like Lonzo Ball was a number 2 overall pick. Brandon Ingram was a number 2 overall pick. Those guys have legitimate draft capital invested into them right now. And I'd say, at what point are you going to start investing in a me, versus going through this number 23 line of thinking where we can find anybody who might have any tie whatsoever back to the Lakers. Like, at some point, you got to start building a team, man. At some point, you got to start building a roster that can actually compete around LeBron. Yeah. And that's what I kind of liked about this trade deadline, was that they actually like started looking at their roster and was like, okay, yeah, Michael, I would much rather have Michael Beasley than Lance Stevenson, but whatever the line of thinking was, is like, all right, we got to start figuring out a way to compete with LeBron on the team. And I hope that they maintain that momentum moving forward. Yeah,
I mentioned this on the pod last night or maybe it was on Twitter. I don't know. This past week has just been a blur. But, I'm on one hand, I'm happy that the Lakers understood that, hey, we have a flaw in this roster, we need to go get shooting. But on the other hand, I'm pissed off basically that they didn't realize this back in July when everybody could figure it out. It was just common sense that, hey, you're going to be, or your roster is filled with guys that can make shots sometimes, but there's really no like legit NBA shooting on that roster. There wasn't a Reggie Bullock or whoever,
Brook Lopez.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, because of the moves that they either made or failed to make in the offseason, it cost them assets to try and make up for it at the trade deadline. They had to, I don't know. For me, I'm kind of just, because I get the Cleveland trade. I fully support their decision with that, getting rid of Clarkson and Nance to clear up cap space, because really, what's the ceiling on those two players, right? Like, they might be decent players off the bench, whatever. But I'm just kind of getting at the point where I'm just annoyed at their star chasing so much at the expense of all the young talent that they lost so many games, in order to get. It's really annoying to see them continue to give up on promising young players. The Russell trade, you can spin it as they're trying to create, 2 max slots, which for some reason everybody thinks that trade allowed the Lakers to get LeBron, which the Lakers didn't need to make that trade to open up 1 max spot. But
I'm contractually obligated not to speak on this contract, not on this trade.
But you know what I mean? Like, Russell gets traded and now he's an all-star, and Randall, basically, they just dumped him basically and just said, we don't have any need for you anymore. And he's having a good year with the Pelicans. So it's like, and now Zubats is going to, start at center for the Clippers and probably play pretty well because he had played pretty well this season. And he's still super young and he's probably going to continue to get better. And it's like, at what point, do you understand that sustainability is going to come through your young players, right? And I get the whole win now stuff, and Magic, I feel like, is very, very impatient. But it's like they were set up to do both. And it just feels like they're ready to throw the long-term success away to just get some big names in now. And
I think the thing of it is like you said, they were set up to do both. Not only do they still have cap space to get another max guy, and it just doesn't make much sense to try to trade all of these guys that you've like Anthony said, invested multiple lottery picks into, to pair LeBron with another star right away when you haven't really even these young guys have shown flashes of legit NBA talent that can contribute to wins, players that you would like on your roster going in the playoffs, and to just kind of throw that all the way to when you don't really necessarily even need to, the desperation that they acted with at the trade deadline with specifically the Anthony Davis talks just really rubbed me the wrong way. Especially how they've treated their player development with the young guys in their first couple years here.
It was just such a sign of desperation to me personally, and it's purely speculation on my part, but they were just going into the season. They were basically just so confident that we've got this young core of players around LeBron James, and they're going to continue to get better. And then we've got max cap space for a Kevin Durant or a Kawhi Leonard, one of those players. And then it's Anthony Davis becomes available. And I get it. I get trying to go hard after Anthony Davis. And he's a top 5 player in the league, and he's 25 years old. So, I totally get it. But to jump from the low ball offer to, hey, here's all of our young players.
Yeah, here's everything.
Yeah, and multiple first-round picks. And I don't know. I almost feel like if the Pelicans would have called back and said, we're going to stand firm on our offer of, all the players that you offered – plus 4 first-round picks, I still almost feel like Magic would have caved and would have said, okay, we'll do it just to get Anthony Davis. And I don't know, just the fact that they were pushing so hard, because, going into that scenario, everybody knows Anthony Davis doesn't want to play for the Pelicans anymore. He's trying to dictate where he wants to go, and that's going to rub some people or
ironically,
some teams the wrong way.
He made a stink out of not being able to play for the Pelicans anymore, which says a lot about how little he wants to play for the Pelicans anymore. That he's like, no, I want to go out there and play. I want to play. I want to end this thing on a high note with our fans. Oh, and also I want to fuck you guys out of a lottery.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, and it's just, I don't know. It was just alarming to me that it was just like a total 180, right? Where it was just, now they're hell-bent on making the playoffs. And I mean,
I do honestly, to an extent, believe that say LeBron doesn't get hurt, I think that the injuries just really, really kind of altered their plan, which I don't agree with, that it should have. But they were around Christmas Day, they were sitting in the 4th or 5th spot or whatever, and they were firmly in the play. Well, firmly is, I guess, if you use that. I guess not firmly, but anyways,
he was for the 4th or 5th seed. They were firmly in the playoffs.
Yeah, and come trade deadline, they're on the outside looking in. They're still banged up, and I just wonder how much that impacted their decision making, I guess, and their willingness to, act out of desperation, basically.
All right, so I can only speak to how much I know about. I can only speak to how much I know, right? Basically, when LeBron got hurt and wound up missing 17 games, he wound up missing 18 total, right? Because he played one game and he came back and he missed the next one, right? So he winds up missing 18 games.
Load management.
19 if you include the Pacers game.
Fair point. Good point. So he winds up missing 19 games. And I think that was, I don't think that had anything to do with the Lakers. I think he realized, because of that injury, he looked at his own mortality in the face, his own basketball mortality in the face. And he said, look, maybe Lonzo has it. Maybe Ingram has it. Maybe Kuzma has it, right? Maybe Hart has it. But I don't have time to stick around here and find out if they do. Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, they were already doing back-channeled communications with Anthony Davis by way of Rich Paul.
Yeah.
And I think that convolution of those two things taking place in the same amount of a short span of time, that had a huge part to do with how things went down with the Lakers and the Pelicans negotiations. My thing is, I can't quite blame them. You know, I can't. It's hard for me to look at LeBron and say, look, he is going up against, he's already the most scrutinized athlete, I think, of all time, right? Because of how tremendously physically talented he is. He is a better overall player than Kobe was. He has more physical talents than Michael Jordan had. People look at LeBron James and they say, that guy should be the best of all time. Yeah. And I think he recognizes this. I think he looks at that and he says, like, I got to do everything I can to put myself in a situation where I can do as much as I possibly can to leapfrog these guys who are ahead of me. And I think the way that these negotiations went down, it was a statement about the Lakers. I think the Lakers being able to fold to those wishes and to those desires and to that recognition is one thing, but also, like, that was a huge statement about LeBron, that he was willing to say, like, you know what, guys, we got to do whatever we can to get somebody who is young enough on the back end of my career that I never thought that was going to be able to do, that was ever going to happen. We need to get somebody here who can bolster me up and give me a couple extra shots at a title that I wouldn't otherwise have. Like, all that stuff can be happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, I definitely think it was kind of a wake-up call to him. That's like, you know, Father Time kind of tapped him on the shoulder a little bit with this injury. And I mean, I don't want to dive into speculation about, you know, maybe like if he was, because a lot of people thought he might be sitting out games intentionally to, you know, showcase the young core or whatever. And because, I mean, this was supposed to be a day-to-day injury, right? Like, everybody.
No, but that's more on the Lakers' inability to understand how to diagnose injury.
Yeah,
like, that was the fact that Rich Paul came out. The fact that Rich Paul came out and said, like, no, this is a 3 to 6 week injury, and he was very visibly frustrated and audibly frustrated with how the Lakers handled that. Like, that's on the Lakers, man. And look, we've all been paying attention very closely to the Lakers, right? Like, they say day to day, and that day to day shit lasts for months, weeks, right? And I think LeBron's camp came out there and said, like, no, that's not how we're going to do this with this group. This is not how that's going to work out.
Yeah. I mean, with the Lonzo injury, when they said 4 to 6 weeks, I automatically thought that means 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
because we've seen it for years now. I mean, even with Gary Vitti, and I mean, now with, you know, the current staff there, that they, I don't know if they just undersell things to try and, you know, keep fans from panicking or what it is, but, you know, it just seems like even like a minor ankle sprain will keep a guy out for weeks. And it's incredibly frustrating that, and this is like diving off topic, but that the Lakers have all the resources in the world to have the best people in all these different positions, like analytics, training staff, everything. And they just don't. Like, it's incredibly frustrating. But
we're a family owned and operated spaghetti shop, Gary.
Just, multi-billion-dollar company.
we make a shit ton of spaghetti, Gary.
Best sauce in the world.
It's good, man. But no, Anthony, I'm going to throw this to Hani first. This was another interesting point that you guys had made on a recent episode of Locked On Lakers. And it was just kind of the way that the negotiations were handled. And I guess kind of the Lakers' mindset into going into the negotiations. It was like, I think it was Pete that was talking about it, but they kind of went into, you just got the sense that they went into negotiations with like, hey, we're about to steal your franchise player, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were showing up ready to negotiate and make a deal. It was just like, how are we going to rip you off to get the star player? And, so Honey, I guess, does that kind of mentality, I mean, do you believe that point? And how much of that, just basically the way the Lakers have handled stuff like that with, I mean, every time a star player becomes available, they're there. Like they try and pounce on the opportunity. How much do you think that's really rubbing teams the wrong way, and to the point where they just don't want to deal with the Lakers anymore?
I think it absolutely does. And I think this one was also the unique case where it was very transparent that this is the Lakers with, the epitome of clutch on their roster and kind of working together with the player's agency to force his way to LA. I think I absolutely believe that it rubbed the Pelicans the wrong way, between their lowball offers and clutch putting out all the stops of trying to force Anthony Davis to LA. I think it's become very, very clear that the Pelicans didn't want to deal with the Lakers unless they were going to get the entire franchise basically back for him. And, we've heard a lot of people around the team in terms of the beat reporters and whatnot saying that they also believe that other teams are rubbed the wrong way. Between that kind of stuff, they're getting docked for tampering, whether it's been rightful or not. They haven't been very clean in terms of their paper trail and making it less obvious that they are trying to go after these big guys. Like, I mean, since Magic and Pelinka have taken over, they've at least been in tampering investigations, I think 3 times now in like 2 years. Like that kind of stuff, obviously, especially for small market teams that feel like they are already the little brothers to teams like the Lakers and the Knicks, it very much rubs them the wrong way. And they're going to want you to give up everything in your franchise to get their star player. Like the Spurs did the same thing for Kawhi. They wanted everything for him. And the Pelicans did the same thing with Anthony Davis. And it's going to make it very, very hard for the Lakers to keep doing this star hunting thing that they've been doing, especially if they don't sign one in the offseason, to be able to swing a trade for a guy, because most teams aren't going to be willing to trade with them the way that they would with pretty much any other franchise.
I think that it was Windhorse that made this point. And like, say what you will about him, but I think that this was an interesting point that he made about like that the Pelicans never really had the intent. They never really had the intention of dealing with the Lakers, and like they were basically just out to make them. They were just out to disrupt their franchise, basically, like how Rich Paul did with the Pelicans in this trade rumor. They were like, you know what, if this is going to mess with our organization, then we're just going to do whatever we can to mess with you guys, basically. And I feel like that probably does stem from the approach that the Lakers probably have about like just, we just want to come and steal your guy, basically. And I feel like to this point, the Lakers probably should have known this already, that like teams aren't really going to want to deal with them. And there is like, some, there's like, it's like teams like the Spurs, like how Popovich called the Pelicans and like said, don't deal with them and yada, yada. And everybody getting involved. They should have known this going in and just been a lot safer about what they were doing, because it ultimately hurt their team chemistry, and we don't really know how that's going to play out, but like this is definitely like a negotiation like that they have to learn from, like if they're going to get another star and through, or even be able to have relationships with teams going forward. Like you have to learn from this and you have to change your approach.
Yeah, I don't think
shouldn't they have
Pelicans
learned that before this one?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, definitely. That's what I was saying. Like they should have known this already, that teams weren't going to be willing to deal with them if that was their approach, basically. So I mean, it should be definitely obvious at this point with how publicly this failed that they need to do something differently.
Well, and that's kind of the issue I had with it, is that basically, really disrupting your entire locker room could have been avoided had they, I mean, they should have. What should have been in the back of their mind was, hey, when we called the Spurs about Kawhi, they had these ridiculous demands, and they basically just were not going to trade him to us, right? And I mean, that was the same situation here, and like that's something they probably should have recognized early on, that these guys aren't serious about making a deal with us, so we're not going to leak all this info. And that's the thing, is like with the previous regime with Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss, like stuff never got out with them, right? It was to the point where Adrian Wojnarowski,
this is the big point,
is he gets pissed off because the Lakers don't give him information. And then it's like with this whole thing, I mean, they probably weren't leaking it to Woj specifically. It seemed like his info was coming more from a Boston and New Orleans perspective, but like they leaked everything. It was like everything about these negotiations were public, and maybe some of it wasn't true or whatnot, but there was so much noise around very specific details. And with the previous regime, you never got that. Like the big thing with the DeMarcus Cousins rumors back then were the Lakers just aren't willing to include Brandon Ingram, and so I mean with that, I'm not saying I'm not trying to compare like Kupchak and these two different front office structures. But
the big difference there is that, like, it's a huge difference to say that like the Lakers are not willing to offer so and so versus the Lakers have literally and legitimately offered fucking everybody.
Right. That's
everyone.
The point. Yeah, that was the point I was getting to, is like they made it well known that like the only public thing that got out was we support this player. Right? We don't want to get rid of this player. We believe in this guy. Whereas this time around, it was, we're willing to get rid of everybody on this roster, not named LeBron James, to go get this player. And I get it. It's Anthony Davis. Like I said earlier, he's a top 5 player in his prime, like entering his prime, maybe.
Entering his prime.
Yeah. And so like, I get it, but it's just like, you had some leverage going into this situation and you pissed it away in a matter of like 24 to 48 hours by how you handled it. And you jumped from lowball offer to here's everything.
I think that they pissed it off before they even got to the negotiating table.
Well,
like as soon as all right. So I talked earlier about like those two big moments, right? Mm-hmm. About how Gentry called the tampering thing, and then the Lakers lowballed the offer. Those are the two big moments there. And then while the two teams were negotiating, the Lakers went from, we're going to lowball to, fuck it, you could have everything, whatever. Have at it.
There was no middle ground.
There was no middle ground whatsoever. And like, if I was this is why the Pelicans wanted to negotiate with Magic and Magic alone, is that he doesn't understand nuance. I don't have it anymore. There was a very good Magic's tweets account out there that made fun of the fact that dude does not understand nuance. That the fact that guy just like does not understand, does not grasp like middle ground on anything, And I think when you look at the way that these negotiations have gone down with Anthony Davis, overpaying, I think, to get Reggie Bullock, overpaying to get Mike Muscala. Like, this dude does not understand that there are ways to squeeze value out of the peripheries. And this is a legitimate problem, man. Like, the Lakers have the opportunity to be able to take advantage of a huge market and a brand that people want to play for, right? This is great. This is a huge advantage that they can flex on. that doesn't mean that they should now therefore ignore the minor advantages that they could have elsewhere in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we have seen over the course of all of these negotiations, whether it's for Anthony Davis, whether it's for Reggie Bullock, whether it's for Mike Muscala, whether it's for Rajon Rondo, whether it's for Lance Stevenson, like these guys are supposed to be able to flex their muscle and get value because they're the Lakers. And they aren't. They are not. And like if I was just some rando Laker fan, I wouldn't care all that much because the Lakers got LeBron James and it's fun to watch LeBron James play for my organization, the team that I happen to root for.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing as you, Gary, and you, Dylan, and you, Hani, at one point in time, you, Grant, we were all sitting here paying close attention to this shit. Like it would piss me off that these guys aren't investing the same amount of time as I am. I host a daily podcast, guys. It takes me about an hour a day to host my podcast, to edit, to throw it up on Megaphone, and that's the way I make my living.
Wait,
it pisses me off that I cannot say for sure that Magic Johnson puts more time into his job than I do mine. Like that shit pisses me off, man. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get over the fact that like a dude who is a legitimate hero to me, a legit hero. This dude has saved millions of lives with the fact that he has stood up to HIV and to AIDS. Like this dude is a legitimate American and human being hero. But as a Lakers executive, he has skimped on his responsibilities. And I'm sitting here saying, like, you got to do better, bud. You have to. You have to. And he's not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there was one. There was a point that I wanted to make about the thing that kind of worries me is that like all of these leaks, like with their, like their Godfather's offer and everything like that, like. What if that's them trying to like just make it seem like, hey, we did everything we can to get this guy, and maybe that's the way that they look at it, and like that worries me.
This is, I'm glad you brought that up because this is my issue with that. Is they went from, the whole Paul George thing. Paul George's camp specifically said basically the Lakers didn't try hard enough, so I didn't feel wanted by them, right? So now they overcorrected the issue and said, hey, here's half of our roster and every young player and pick we've accumulated over the last 3 or 4 years by losing a ton of games. And it's like they just totally skipped the middle ground in between that, compromising, hey, we're not going to give you every single young player for a player that wants out. And, I mean, the Lakers had to understand that, and I'm actually glad that we're transitioning to the approach this summer, but because the Lakers are obviously going to get back in that mix. I mean, the Celtics will be able to try and get into it and some other teams, but the Lakers had to understand kind of their leverage play here, right? That this was the offer that they gave the Pelicans. Nobody is offering that much this summer. They're just not for a guy that is telling you, hey, if you trade for me, I'm not re-signing with you. You're getting me for a year, and then you gave up a ton for basically 1 year of mediocre basketball.
The only thing that might would be the Knicks if they're willing to offer up Zion.
Yeah.
Like if they win the lottery and they're willing to offer up that top pick, then
I don't even know if that's a given because Zion is like a generational prospect, and you get to control his contract for what 8 or 9 years,
right? But I'm saying like if the Knicks are willing to offer up that for Anthony Davis, then the Lakers aren't going to beat that. There's nothing the Lakers can offer that would beat that. But go ahead. Sorry.
But even with that, that's such a big if, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about the Celtics angle on this. There's so much uncertainty right now with Kyrie Irving that they're not going to say, here's Jason Tatum, even though Kyrie Irving might be leaving us very soon, within a matter of days. And the Pelicans seem like they're we're going to tell the Lakers to go away because we can go get Jason Tatum this summer. I'm sorry. Like, that's just not going to happen. I will stand by that prediction or whatever. People can hold me to it. I just don't see any scenario where Danny Ainge offers Jason Tatum. He's going to say, you can have anybody else on the roster, even Horford, Gordon Hayward, whoever, besides Kyrie and Jason Tatum. Like, those two are going to be untouchable in talks, and the Pelicans aren't going to get the offers that they think they're going to get, and they're certainly not going to get anything close besides Anthony, the Knicks, situation where they could get the number 1 pick or something like that. And even that is just such a long shot. And I mean, the Lakers had to understand that. And like, that was their leverage that like, hey, you guys, like, the clock is ticking on you to get this guy out of here. And, the longer this drags on, the more leverage slips away from you and the more teams are going to take advantage. So you can work with us on making a deal, or your offers this summer are going to be significantly less. And I really think that's the harsh reality that the Pelicans are going to run into. And, they might feel proud that they stuck it to the Lakers or whatever, but that's the issue with that for me, is that this summer the offers are going to be so much more less, and it's going to be funny to watch, actually, because the Pelicans probably are under the impression that this is what the Lakers offered us. How can you guys top that? Mm-hmm. And these teams are going to say, well, we're not dumb like that. We're not going to give you half our roster.
The Lakers can't go into the summer offering the same thing. That's like the bottom.
That's
line.
Exactly that.
That was going to be my next question to you guys is how, I mean, if you were the Lakers, how would you approach it? Like what kind of offer would you be thinking? Like what would you take out of that package? Obviously Zubac can't be included because he's with the Clippers now, but I mean, how should they approach this thing now? And Hani, go ahead, you take it first because you haven't gotten to chime in.
I mean,
a little bit.
Whoa, Hani's still here?
Yeah, barely. I think it would be legitimately dumb for the Lakers to offer up the same package because it doesn't make sense. On one hand, if the Celtics are willing to give up Jason Tatum, whether they believe Kyrie is going to re-sign or whatever, I don't think they are either. But if they are, then the Lakers
will just to prove me wrong.
Tatum. Yeah, because the Lakers wouldn't be able to beat it because from whatever we hear from other organizations, it seems like Tatum is the guy that they think out of all these young players that can be an all-NBA player in however many years. I think a lot of us agree that the gap between him and some of the Lakers young guys isn't as big as a lot of people say, but I do think he is the best player out of all of them and has the highest ceiling. So if that's the case, then they accept the Celtics offer and who cares, whatever. But if they don't offer him, then why should the Lakers be giving up every single asset on their roster when they know other teams can't beat their trade package? So this idea that the Pelicans, reportedly feel very confident that the Lakers package is going to be the same during the summer, either the Pelicans aren't thinking this through and are, I don't know what they're basing it off, or that they think that the Lakers are dumb enough to offer the same thing, which is very terrifying. But also, like, it wouldn't completely shock me. It just, I don't think it makes any sense at all.
Do you guys follow positive residual?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He made, I think, the best point throughout all of this that was made throughout the last week and a half or so, where he said, like, the Lakers should overpay, and the excess that they would be offering would be a means to basically pay for New Orleans not making it to the summer, right? So the Lakers, if let's say Anthony Davis costs $1,
mm-hmm.
right? And the Lakers have, we'll say 75 cents to offer for Anthony Davis. Other teams might have 75 cents to offer for Anthony Davis right now. But it makes sense for the Lakers to overpay before those other teams get to offer up on Anthony Davis, because they're paying for New Orleans to not make it to the free market. Like that's the extra payment, the excess payment right there. Yeah. And I think that was a really good point to make. the Pelicans passed on that excess payment. The Pelicans said, like, all right, we're gonna get here to the open market, and we're gonna see what this market looks like. And we'll see. Maybe their gamble pays off. Maybe the Celtics are willing to offer Tatum their 2 non-Celtics picks and fucking Brad Stevens. Maybe. Who knows? Right? Maybe some like non-Lakers or Celtics or Knicks team swoops in and says, we're going to offer this ready-to-play now guy who might, like, let's say, here's a team that I think should get into the talks this summer, is the Portland Trail Blazers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say the Portland Trail Blazers go, we'll give you Dame and a future first for Anthony Davis. How do you, if you're the Pelicans, how do you say no to that?
You don't.
That's a way better offer than whatever else is out there right now, right?
Yeah, you're getting a franchise player in return
immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm not predicting that that's an offer that might actually go down, but I'm saying like let's say Phoenix gets in there after having offered up way too much money for Devin Booker, and they say, here's Devin Booker and a future unprotected first this summer. The Pelicans have to take that offer, right? They have to.
I think a team like the Nuggets would.
Yeah, like there are going to be other offers there this summer.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the Lakers had to offer everything was to make sure that the Pelicans didn't see any of those offers. That said, that's not a guarantee that those offers are going to actually come. You know, and so I think both sides were right to play things out the way that they did right now, where the Pelicans said, we're gonna wash our hands of these negotiations. We want to get to this upcoming offseason and see what that has in store for us there. For the Lakers, they should have offered everything to make sure that they could overpay so that maybe they could land Anthony Davis right now. Where I think the Lakers erred was allowing any of their offers to be made public by people from the LA Times.
Mm-hmm.
Not like Woj was always going to throw out there whatever Woj was going to throw out there. But what the Lakers need to figure out here soon is this is our local market. We're going to control the information that comes out of our local market. And I think where Magic fucked up the biggest was not understanding that he has a local market, a local media that can throw out their information however he wants it to be thrown out there. I don't think he recognized how valuable that information might be.
I wonder. Yeah. I wonder if I wonder if their meeting that they're gonna have. I'm assuming it'll probably be like tomorrow or something like that. I wonder how much that'll change. I don't know that it will, because like he's Magic Johnson. He's probably pretty set in his ways. I wonder how much that will change the way that he does things from now on. I don't know. The
big thing to me is LeBron. How does LeBron handle that meeting? Magic's pretty straightforward, right? Magic, for Magic to have that meeting, it's pretty straightforward. I am an executive. I am tasked with building a roster that can win a championship. So for all of you guys, except for LeBron, y'all are assets, right?
Yeah.
The big thing for me is, how does LeBron handle that meeting? Because he's a teammate. He's not just some executive. How does that conversation go down between him and his teammates?
He's the guy who on opening night said, when you fall down, you don't get back up. You let your brother pick you up.
Yeah. And if I was one of his teammates, I'd be like, weren't you that guy who said that before? Are you? If that isn't you, then how do we proceed forward? Moving forward, how do we move forward? And I think that's a perfectly logical question to ask.
Yeah, it's a big issue. I mean, it's something that the team is going to have to address, and hopefully, it's one of those situations where LeBron steps up and just tries to basically, kind of right the ship and just get everybody trying back on the same page, because I don't know. I mean, how the meeting with Magic is going to go, and basically what you said, Anthony. It's his job to put together a championship roster, and a player like Anthony Davis doesn't come available very often.
Mm-hmm.
Paul George is a great player. He's not Anthony Davis, which is funny because he's an all-star starter this year and Davis isn't. But Kawhi Leonard comes available. And with that, that whole situation was a little different because you had the injury and whatnot, and you knew the Spurs weren't going to deal him to the Lakers. But a guy like Anthony Davis, though, hasn't even hit his prime yet. And he's available like that. That doesn't happen very often. So I get going all in on it, but like you said, basically, Anthony, the issue is just all that info getting out, because you could keep things quiet, because you don't want young players knowing that, hey, we're trying to get rid of all these guys. Right? That's just not going to be good for morale. They're not going to all handle it like Brandon Ingram seems to do, where he's like, I don't really care. I'm just going to play basketball. I really don't think it bothers Ingram at all. But Kuzma acknowledged it last night after the win against the Celtics. It was it's just a lot of weight lifted off their shoulders that they don't have to kind of look over their shoulders and wonder if they're getting traded that day. So, and obviously the Pelicans were leaking information and through Woj and whoever, but the Lakers were doing the same thing, and that's kind of the issue with the whole thing, is that you can't let that stuff get out, right? Until there's something concrete, there's actual traction to, and you think you're actually going to get a deal done. Which with these two, from what we've heard, it never even got close. And for all that info to get out when there was, it should have been obvious to them from the get-go, basically, that they weren't going to get a deal done. So letting all this info get out was just the complete wrong way to handle it. And that's where my frustrations lie. And I hope they learn from it. And I hope this summer they just kind of learn to kind of keep things, close to the chest. And I just want that to improve, because
I just want Pelinka fired for somebody who has more experience.
Yeah, well,
I want Pelinka gone. Pelinka. The only reason Pelinka has the job that he has right now is because he fleeced the Lakers for the contract that they gave Kobe at the end of his career, which, by the way, fucking handcuffed the Lakers for a long time. If Pelinka is supposed to be this great grand negotiator, do some freaking negotiating. How do they give up a fee and a second round pick to get Reggie Bullock when Wayne Ellington was about to hit the open market for nothing? How do they give up Ivica Zubac and Michael Beasley for Mike Muscala when Frank Kaminsky, who's the same player, was about to hit the wide open market? How does this happen, man? Your job is to focus on these small perimeter things. If Magic is tasked with figuring out the big things, Pelinka is in charge of figuring out the small things. And Magic has actually lived up to his billing, right? He got LeBron, but Pelinka has not done anything. I can't figure out what purpose Pelinka does. Pelinka was the reason that they were fined $500,000 because of the Paul George thing. So please, Genie Bus, I'm asking you legitimately, if you're there's no way you're listening to this, and there's no way that you're going to listen to this moving forward.
I was going to say, if you are.
Maybe at some point, somebody will relay this message to you.
My DMs are open.
Yeah, maybe she follows me. Jeannie, I'll tweet this shit out. Jeannie, I'm asking you, other than Rob Pelinka at one point fleecing you for $15 million for Kobe, tell me what the fuck purpose Rob Pelinka serves in your organization right now. That's all I want to know. That's all I want to know. Otherwise, why isn't that person Jerry West? Why isn't that person Ryan West? Why isn't that person somebody who has any any experience in negotiating against other NBA teams whatsoever? Because right now, Rob Pelinka's done shit, man. Nothing. All he's done is provided great quotes with his stupid analogies to other beat reporters who love to laugh at this stuff. It's great. Harrison made a great blog post today for Silver Screen and Roll. You should read it at silverscreenandroll.com. At Lakers SBN on Twitter if you want to find it. At Silver Screen and Roll on Instagram if you want to find them there. But
we've let you swear all over this pod. You're not going to plug Silver Screen and Roll.
This isn't like a 4-minute monologue. You just plug it.
But I want to know, like, what purpose does Rob Pelinka serve? What does he do? What is he there for? He's the guy who's supposed to stop. He's the guy who's supposed to stop the Lakers from being fined from this shit, but he got them fined. Like, he was legitimately tied to the original fine. What are we doing here? Hire somebody who has experience, who brings something to the organization. That's all I'm asking. Jeannie, I'm so happy Anthony in LA.
I was so happy you actually brought up Pelinka, because that was the last point I wanted to touch on before we sign off, because we've been kind of running long here. But but no, the thing that rubbed me the wrong way when Pelinka and Magic were hired was like openly like tweeting out, "We're going to CBA school," right? Like, shouldn't that be something you know when you get that job? Like, already?
The purpose of Pelinka. That's what he was there for.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Pelinka too.
And he's the one who fucked up CBA school.
Well, and he had this reputation as like this super agent, right? Because he had Kobe and he had these other clients.
He got fired by Andre Drummond.
Well, and that's the thing is there are like pretty well documented stories out there of him rubbing teams the wrong way, and it's like you hired him knowing this guy is going to have to negotiate with these teams, because there was, especially with the Pelicans specifically, there was the situation with Eric Gordon a few years back, right? Where they kind of basically Pelinka kind of screwed him over with that. And, you know, he was a restricted free agent and basically did all he could to get him out of there. And just the way he handled it really rubbed them the wrong way. So it was like, I think that kind of factored in too, where, you know, maybe, yeah, the Pelicans said, hey, we want to talk to Magic because, you know, they probably thought they could take advantage of him. But at the same time, they probably didn't want to talk to Pelinka because they're like, you know, screw that guy. Like, for, you know, they remember what he did.
To Pelinka. That dude's going to talk to me for like 3 hours about like fucking the Book of Solomon. I don't want to hear that shit. I just want to talk about the player I want to talk about.
But you know what I mean? Like, he had this reputation as like this super agent, and like, oh, this is an outside the box hire that, you know, he's going to understand the other end of it and some of the free agents. Yeah. Right. But it's like Pelinka kind of had a reputation of rubbing teams the wrong way and how he went about his business. And that just seemed to get kind of swept under the rug. And I've seen some people kind of point it out now that, you know, they're finding out it's hard for him and Magic to do business with these teams. And yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give them some more time or whatever, and we'll see how they handle this offseason. Because this offseason, I mean, it might be a make or break offseason for them, depending on how they handle it, right? Because this was their thing. They said 2 years, you know,
yeah,
we'll
Magic put himself on a timeline.
Yeah, last offseason and this offseason. They're like, that's what we need. And so this is a huge offseason for them, and they're going to have to step up and perform, because the whole premise of the Russell trade, and, you know, I don't really mean to keep bringing it up, but the whole premise of that and the moves right after that was, you know, we want to get 2 max guys. They got LeBron. It's like now they've got to deliver on it.
Not just 2 max guys, but it was 2 max guys in free agency plus potentially trading for another guy if they have to.
I feel like the Pelicans might have thought that D'Angelo Russell was pretty attractive in an Anthony Davis trade.
I'm looking forward to watching D'Angelo Russell as an all-star. That's going to be a lot of fun.
We could have had a second all-star next to LeBron. No, I don't know if he would have made it in the West. But it just goes to the point that I was kind of talking about earlier, is that they're not ready to, or not willing to give young players time to develop, and it's all win now. And it's like, you have cap space. You have the avenue to win now and set up your future at the same time. Like, things are set up so well, and they were willing to just, throw the future away. Granted, they would have had Anthony Davis, and we've seen with this, this current NBA, in the West especially, one superstar really isn't enough, right? Like, unless you're just your roster is really good from top to bottom, and this front office hasn't shown that they can actually fill out a roster with those value signings and like those quality role players. Like I'm trying to think of like value signings that the Lakers like really got, and the one that I immediately jumped to was from Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss, and that was Lou Williams. Like, that was a great signing, and like those are the types of deals that I want to see this front office start to make.
I think Bullock falls under that category. I think they overpaid having to attach a second two fee, but that's the closest that this front office is going to come to that.
Yeah.
It's the best like marginal move that they've made.
Yeah.
By far.
I legitimately Googled like, all right, Reggie Bullock, Rob Pelinka agent, Reggie Bullock, Clutch Sports, Reggie Bullock, Lakers fandom, which it turns out like he actually was like a Lakers fan at one point, but like that doesn't really matter all that much. What's funny is that like right now is that like the Lakers are choosing between Carmelo Anthony, who is a close friend of LeBron's, obviously, and Markieff Morris, who was at one point who is right now a Clutch Sports client. So that's the thing, is they're allowing basically outside parties dictate how they do business. My thing is, Pelinka, you haven't done shit else. Why isn't James Harden a Laker?
Yeah.
He was at one point your client. Do something, man. Shit. I'm kidding. That was me trying to go like full hammered Anthony. I couldn't.
Sound more like Mike Francesca.
Yeah.
No, we definitely
Motherfucker! I just want to know.
No, we definitely got full hammered Anthony, I think, a little earlier. At one point I thought you were gonna slam like your mic out of like frustration and anger.
I thought about it.
We started this podcast with me saying we're gonna get this podcast off of every platform. Now I'm not sure if I won't get kicked out of Los Angeles.
Oh, all right. Well, any other points you guys want to add on before we
I have another. No, I'm
yeah, I was like, anybody not named Anthony.
I'm just looking forward to us beating the 76ers and then losing to the Hawks next week.
That's a good prediction. That's a really good one.
Would not surprise anybody. All right. Well, this was a lot of fun, Anthony. I always love having you on, man, because you're like, you are kind of like the Lakers in the respect that like people either love you or they hate your guts.
Everything about me. I've gotten at some point. I'll screen grab all of them, but like there were 3 different emails. There were single word emails. It just said it called me a racist. That's a.
We're gonna do next podcast that Anthony's on. We should do mean tweets, but only with Anthony.
You guys have to go through them because I've muted so many people. I couldn't find them myself.
Sounds good.
Well, put that on the to-do list. All right. Well, this was a lot of fun. This pod went a lot longer than I anticipated. And Grant, you were smart to duck out of here like 15 minutes in. But
people in the live have been asking where Grant is for the past hour.
Yeah, people listening to this on iTunes didn't see his little video square drop out. Or like, why isn't Grant talking? But no, this was fun. Anthony, I always appreciate you coming on. And make sure you guys go, if you don't already, you should subscribe to the Locked On Lakers podcast. I listen to it every day at work, and it either cracks me up or like you're definitely going to want to listen to the episode, the post Celtics victory episode. That was.
I will remember Zoo.
All right, I'm cutting this off. I'm cutting this off right now. I swear to God.
Feet.
Good Lord, man.
Oh yeah, but no, this was fun. Appreciate. Jesus Christ.
Pass you by.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna boot him. I'm gonna do
it. These Laker teams.
Until next time, guys. We'll just see you later. I'm not gonna plug anything. We're out of here.
Shout out Andre Drummond who fired Rob Pelinka.